The Department of Basic Education says its new strategy for early learning projects will require an additional 115,000 venues to accommodate 2.9 million toddlers between the ages of 3 and 5 by 2030. But to what extent is the strategy feasible and practical? Joining us now for a broader discussion in this is DG Murray Trust CEO David Harrison. David, thank you so much for your time and for joining us this evening. Could you perhaps just provide us with an overview of the Department of Education's new strategy when it comes to ECD?
Thanks very much, Katlego. Thanks for having me on the program. So it's correct that the Department of Basic Education has projected that 115,000 new venues will be needed. But what is really significant and what I think is breakthrough thinking is that it's acknowledged that while that's the goal and while those plans will be put in place and while money will be sought over time to build those venues, we have to reach children now. And so for the first time, the department has recognized that children in play groups, in day mother settings, in informal childminder situations can be brought into the fold, can be brought in and in fact supported and have access to the subsidy, the ECD subsidy that has only been available for more established ECD centers. So this is a major breakthrough. That for us is the biggest breakthrough. They've also recognized the importance of starting before the age of 3. And so they have said that they need to work with the Department of Health to bring brain and body development to children younger than 3, which we know is critical. So these are the two critical pieces that we are very delighted about. And we feel that the department has been able to break out of a mindset in which this country has been stuck for the last 25 years.
So given those past shortfalls of the department when it comes to ECD, just give us maybe the practicalities in terms of how this will be implemented and how this strategy aims to address the existing inequality divide within ECD in South Africa.
Well, let's just start and break it down by putting ourselves in the shoes of an ECD practitioner or a childminder who's been trying to get access to money from government to support her 6 or 8 or 10 children that she serves. She gets some money from the parents, but it's not enough. She would like to get access to that 17 Rand a day subsidy from government. But the problem is that she just doesn't have the money to build the type of building that will meet the standards that government requires, that local authorities require. So she's been excluded. And the crazy thing, therefore, has been that our poorest children who need early learning most have been most excluded. So the great thing about what this means is that there can be registration of those sort of facilities, which means that those childminders and those nascent early childhood practitioners can get access to government funding if they meet basic norms and standards, basic health and safety standards. This is the breakthrough. It's a foot in the door. We know that there isn't the money to massively scale up early learning across the country at the moment. So we're not naive. We don't think that this is going to change the situation in the next year or two. But what it does do is it starts to open the door to the poorest 40% of childminders in the country who previously couldn't get access to it at all.
And speaking of that and saying that we're not naive to the fact that this can't be scaled up exponentially, do you believe that there should be targeted regions or communities for the strategy to be first focused on?
Well, we have to focus on the poorest districts. We know that only about 50% of the poorest 40% of children in the country are in any sort of early learning program, compared to 80%, 85% of the wealthiest children. So we have to target. We've got to go to those areas and those communities that are poorest, identify early learning practitioners who've been struggling and register them and support them. And so, in fact, the department is starting to do that. Literally just yesterday, started a mass registration drive to try and bring these early learning practitioners onto the radar, so at least people know where they are, and so that incrementally, as money becomes available, they can also be included in fiscal allocations.
So this is less about the facilities in which the children are learning in and more about their experiences. From your own experience, how much is a lack of a quality ECD development of a child between the age of 3 and 5 have an impact in their primary school years?
Well, we know that children who have had a quality early learning experience tend to thrive at school. They do better than their counterparts. And this really is the most fundamental way in which we're going to break the cycle of exclusion in our country. Up to now, the poorest children have not been able to get into early learning, which means they enter school at a disadvantage. They're among the 40% of children who drop out before matric. They become unemployed. Their children are excluded from preschools. So this is the cycle that needs to be broken. So early childhood development is an incredibly powerful way in which we can change the future of our country. And that's why we have to put the necessary money and the necessary effort in place. And as you said, the amazing thing here is that we're now making this about the child and say, let's provide a quality experience, early learning experience for children wherever they are. Let's not make this about the building. Let's make this about the child. And we've seen in South Africa initiatives like Smart Start, other early learning programs, that you can reach a child in a corrugated iron shack as long as it's got a fenced-off play area and as long as basic safety. You can reach and bring a package of support to that childminder so that the children start to thrive, so that their bodies and their brains develop. We've been able to prove that, and that's been part of the reason why government has now made the shift.
And are there measures in place in assisting the childminder herself in equipping her with the valuable core skills in order to be able to give these children a quality developing education?
It's so critical, and we've got about 90 resource and training organizations across the country that provide that type of coaching. I described Smart Start, which is a network of nearly 100,000 children, 10,000 practitioners across the country. They're supported by coaches who are in turn supported by organizations, these resource and training organizations. So there's a cascade of support. But the important thing is that for the first time, we're tapping into these large socioeconomic networks in the informal sector, not the formal sector. We're reaching women practitioners where they are. We're upskilling them so that they can both achieve brighter children and jobs for themselves at the same time.
Any challenges that you foresee with the strategy or risks that could be averted in the future?
Well, I mean, the critical thing is that we need to understand that we're not trying to formalize the informal sector. We're trying to make use of the energy and make use of the pace that is in that informal sector, enrich them, find ways of creating an interface with government that allows government funding to start to flow into those informal spaces as well. If we're thinking that we can take a childminder with a grade 11 and make her a teacher in a school, we're going to fail. So that's a critical first step. Understand and value the childminders and enrich their lives where they are. The second thing is money. I mean, we must have more money for early childhood development, and we're hoping that what this will do is make a stronger case for public investment in early learning. And the third thing is that supervision is so important. We've got to have these networks of coaches across the country that are working, that are building the capacity of the early learning practitioners. And that means that we've got to support programs and not only support the per capita subsidy for the child. These are some of the key risks, but I think we've made tremendous progress over the last 10 years. And I think I think the future is far brighter as a consequence of where we are today.
Any role that the private sector could play in this?
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. The private sector is sitting with massive distribution systems across the country. Just think of every retailer. Think of the communication that they've got. Think of the distribution, the trucks that go out to deep rural areas across the country. Now, we're talking about early learning practitioners that are in the deepest rural areas, in the deepest informal settlements. But there is a ShopRite there. There is a USave. There are these local retailers, these spaza shops across the country. Our biggest struggle is to get learning materials, stories, books into the hands of those early learning practitioners. It would be fantastic if there were a national book fund that could procure books. We'd be part of doing that if the private sector were willing to help us with the distribution across the country.
And from where you stand, does it look as if the department has an effective plan in place in order to effectively implement the strategy?
I think they have got an effective plan for 3 to 5 year olds. It's not yet clear exactly what they're going to be doing to support younger children, which as we say is critical. We've got a major gap in South Africa. We don't invest enough in early language development. We really don't get the basics right, and then we wonder why children struggle at school. So this is an area that still requires development. We need a program of brain stimulation, of language development, of socio-emotional support to 0 to 3 year olds, and that needs to be properly defined as well.
And how do you think we will then be able to measure the impact and the effectiveness of the strategy 5-10 years from now?
Well, we've over the last few years, we've managed, working together with groups like Thrive by 5, Innovation Edge, have developed tools for measuring the outcomes of these programs. It's called the Early Learning Outcome Measure. So that's the amazing thing. I'm able to be on this program tonight and tell you that Smart Start works, that by enriching an early learning practitioner in an informal settlement, your child's physical, socio-emotional, and cognitive, their brain development, can all improve. Why can I say that? Because we have the instruments. So those are the type of instruments that we must continue to use. We mustn't simply throw money at a problem. We must ensure that we have a very clear design, a very clear intervention strategy, and then evaluation to prove that we have impact.
All right. Mr. Harrison, thank you so much for your time.